Hello, my name is Andrea, and this is High Literature, a program where I introduce art and stories to you, the viewer. I have a few things here that I wanted to share. First, I wanted to talk about I went to the book signing event in Greensboro for Kayla E's Precious Rubbish, and it was amazing. If you have the opportunity to go to one of her tour stops, I highly recommend you do so. It was such a great in conversation event. The person who was hosting it, Jennifer Whitaker, she was so phenomenal, and it was just such a great experience. The energy was just so kind and supportive, and it was really strange. So at the end of the talk, they had this period of time where they were taking questions from people, and obviously I had questions, but I will always have a hard time, raising my hand to, like, I have a question or something to add, or it doesn't matter if there's a crowd and it's time to, like, take questions. It's just hard to stand up and speak, and it strangely reminded me of Sarah's service last year. There was, this point in time where people were taking turns with the microphone to share a memory. And as this was going on and more people started speaking, people would open with how they aren't naturally inclined to stand up and speak in front of a big group of people, that, they are more withdrawn, more reserved, but they were just so inspired by hearing other people that it gave them the courage to stand up and do it themselves. And it had that same feeling here, where you could just tell, like, each person that was raising their hand to speak, it was difficult for them. Like, I could just see it, like, in their body language, the tone of their voice, the volume of their voice, that it was hard, but they were just so inspired by the person before them that they were, they felt brave enough to also stand up and contribute. And it was just really beautiful. This book, it's like, there, after it was over, everybody got in line and you could, get your book signed and talk to Kayla. And I was telling her how this book, it gives people a voice, and it feels like somebody is speaking for them. And I think it's empowering. It helps people feel like they're not alone. It makes people feel like that they can survive and come out the other side of things. And I'm just so glad I went. This is such a good book. I finally did raise my hand and ask a question, and it was about these characters in this book that I was so intrigued by. These characters, the witch and the nun, and And I was just so curious about these characters because I have a complicated relationship with religion and Christianity. Just growing up where I did, it was just such a big part of my life, and not necessarily in a good way. And it was really wonderful to hear her talk about. So these characters, Kayla was saying, they are actually based off herself and her wife. Kayla being the witch and her wife being the nun. And she was talking about how, you know, her upbringing was just so bad. And she just, you know, she just became this raging atheist. And then she met her wife, who is a Christian and gay, and she was able to help her reconcile this damaged relationship, because the way she was explaining it, and I just related to this so much, there was a draw for her because of her upbringing. You know, there's, you know, these familiarities with it, and with that familiarity there's a comfort to it, but because of all the bad things that happen, you know, at the same time she was very, you know, adverse to it. And this experience that she had with this woman who's now her wife, it helped her recontextualize things and have a different approach with the relationship that she wanted to have with this particular aspect in her life. And it was just so gratifying to hear her talk about that, because it's hard, you know, trying to figure out how to be comfortable with something that has caused you so much pain before in the past. And another thing that came up that I just found so interesting. So where I grew up, if my parents hadn't opened the shop, I don't know if I would have gotten into comics, because there just wasn't anything else except for like, other than than the store. My only exposure to comics were like the Betty and Veronica and Archie like digest magazines that I would get in the Winn-Dixie checkout. And so when I saw in this book these panels of, you know, being at Winn-Dixie, it just really just hit me hard in a very unexpected way. I just, you know, you see these things and they just have such an impact. And it's because of just all the correlations and the ties from situations before. And it's just so, you know, they just come out of nowhere. You know, I just was not expecting to turn this page and see these panels with the words Winn-Dixie and feel so emotional over it. But I was curious, how did Kayla herself get into comics? Because from what I got from this book and just, you know, different things that I read about her, it was obvious, you know, she grew up in a very rural part of the country. And I wondered if she got into comics in that way with, you know, the Archie Digest comics and the checkout line. And the host, Jennifer, asked her about it, and sure enough, that is how she got into comics, was the Riverdale gang. And it was just so cool to hear her say that. Like when you have these curiosities and you know, you're wondering about somebody and then you find out, oh, I was right. And it was just really neat. And I just felt so happy to see her and witness this thing happening. It's just so, I mean, what a journey this person has been on. And I'm just like, there aren't enough words to express how over the moon I am for her to have such a love filled life after everything that she went through. And it's just been a really tumultuous, bittersweet experience reading this book and like just revisiting things in my past. And I just feel like I know it's going to sound kind of over the top, but I mean it. Like her, like the way that she was describing how this book came into being and the fact that she's here herself, like alive and drawing breath. I just like this book and Kayla herself and her life. It all just seems it the way it fits in my head. Just the whole narrative of it. It's a miracle. It's this book shouldn't exist, and Kayla. It's a miracle that this exists and that Kayla is here and has just the beautiful, radiant everything. I mean, you gotta go. If you can go to one of these events on her book tour and you get a chance to like meet her and talk with her, you'll see what I'm talking about. She's a force of nature. She's just amazing. And I'm just so glad that I have this book. And it was really interesting. One thing she was talking about how she was, you know, she's reading reviews and stuff. And one of the reviews, it was a negative review. And it was saying how, you know, there's no happy ending and it's such a downer of a book. And I can understand why somebody would read this and think that. And there's no right or wrong way to interpret this book. You know, everybody has their own struggles, their own history, and everyone has their own limitation lines. Like, this is the capacity of forgiveness for various things. So I'm, you know, saying that this book is unreadable because it's such a downer. I'm not going to argue and say that person's wrong. For some people, I can see how this would be that way. One part in particular, at the very end, she has this part. Please remember that they never loved you. And I can see how people would interpret that as really bleak or like kind of grudge holding, like, oh, you know, you're just gonna hold on to this forever and never let this go. But I don't see it that way. Please remember that they never loved you. This is a reaffirmation of someone reminding themselves to protect their peace and protect their happiness. And sometimes in order to do that, you have to do these, you know, that this is the line in the sand. This is the cutoff. The kitchen is closed. No man shall pass. And so, yeah, it's a rough book. There's this part. So one of the things that I really enjoy about this book are the ads. It's very, like, Chris Ware is one of her mentors. And I mean, oh my God, can you imagine being able to say those words? Chris Ware is one of my mentors. Amazing. And there was so much, like, I'm reading this book and it just reminded me of Chris Ware. And one of those things were the ads. And like, for example, like these guys here, and they're very sardonic. Protein Plus, protein powder with 100 proof vodka additive for bulking up and blacking out. And she was saying that there were people that were saying that the ads were just unreadable and they were just so depressing and they just had to skip over them. And I think they're hilarious. They're dark, but you know, that's sardonic. That's it's funny. But again, you know, I can understand why for some people it would be stressful. And so I'm going to get lost in this book and we're going to sit here in silence for a while. So I'm going to stop. But yes, in conclusion, get this book if you can. Go to a tour stop if you can. Meet Kayla if you can. And if you can't do any of these things, then I encourage you to watch some of her videos. She has plenty of interviews up about this book. She did, they're all over the internet, and she's just a lovely person to listen to you know, listen to her talk and talk about this book and talk about her life. She's just great. Yeah, we're Kayla fans. So there's that. Last week I read this thing about Truman Capote. And there are parts of it that just really stuck out to me. Like this sentence here, the stories provide ample evidence that Capote had found his own voice by a very early age and at the same time had to work hard to develop it. And I just love that acknowledgement of you can be somebody who's just blessed, lucky, gifted, whatever you want to call it. You know, you're just naturally born with this God-given talent. But you still have to work on it. You still have to refine it. You still have to hone your practice. And I just think that's very important to remember. For anybody out there who's struggling with creativity, whether it's writing or drawing or painting or making music or cooking or carpentry, it doesn't matter how badass you are or how good you are at it. You still have to practice. You still have to keep trying. There's never a stopping point unless you personally feel, okay, I'm satisfied. I'm going to rest on my laurels. But I just think it's just really encouraging and motivational and helps keep in mind not to give up and to just keep trying. So there's this story in here. So these early stories, these are stories that he wrote when he was a teenager. And we're going to read one now. It's called Where the World Begins. And it's about, well, we're just going to read. It's a short story. This is 1, 2, 3, 4. Miss Carter had been explaining the eccentricities of algebra for almost 20 minutes now. Sally looked disgustedly up at the snail-like hands of the schoolroom clock. Only 25 more minutes and then freedom. Sweet, precious freedom. She looked at the piece of yellow paper in front of her for the 100th time. Empty. Ah, well, Sally glanced around her, staring with contempt at the hard-working mathematical students. Humph, she thought, as if they're going to make a success in life just by adding up a lot of figures and X's that don't make any sense anyway. Wait till they get out in the world. Exactly what getting out in the world or life was, she wasn't sure. However, her elders had led her to believe it was some horrible ordeal that she was going to have to undergo at some definite future date. Uh-oh, she moaned. Here comes Robot. She called Miss Carter Robot because that was what Miss Carter reminded her of. A perfect machine, accurate, well-oiled, and as cold and shiny as steel. Hurriedly, she scribbled a mass of illegible numbers over the yellow paper. At least, Sally thought, that'll make her think I'm working. Miss Carter sailed past her without even a look. Sally breathed a deep sigh of relief. Robot. Her seat was right next to the window. The room was on the 3rd floor of the high school, and from where she sat she could see a beautiful view. She turned to gaze outside. Her eyes became dilated and glassy and unseeing. This year it makes us very happy to present the Academy Award for the finest portrayal of the year to Miss Sally Lamb for her unparalleled performance in Desire. Miss Lamb, will you please accept Oscar on behalf of myself and my associates? A beautiful, striking woman reaches out and gathers the golden statuette in her arms. Thank you, she says in a deep, rich voice. I suppose when something wonderful like this happens to anyone, they're supposed to make a speech, but I'm just too grateful to say anything. And then she sits down with applause ringing in her ears. Bravo for Miss Lamb. Hooray. Clap, 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 clap. Champagne. Did you really like me? Autograph? But certainly. What did you say your first name was, dear boy? John? Oh, French. Jean. All right. To Jean, a dear friend. Sally Lamb. Autograph, please. Miss Lamb. Autograph, autograph. Star, money, fame, beautiful, glamorous Clark Gable. Are you listening, Sally? Miss Carter sounded very angry. Sally jumped around, startled. Yes, ma'am. Well, then, if you're paying such undivided attention, perhaps you can explain this last problem I put on the board. Miss Carter's gaze swept the class superciliously. Sally stared helplessly at the board. She could feel Robot's cold eyes on her and the giggling brats. She could have choked them all until their tongues hung out. Damn them. Oh well, she was licked. The numbers, the squares, the crazy X's, Greek. Just as I thought, the robot announced triumphantly. Yes, just as I thought. You've been off in space again. I would like to know what goes on in that head of yours. Certainly it has nothing to do with your schoolwork. For a girl who's so stupid, it looks like you could at least favor us with your attention. It's not just you, Sally, but you disrupt the whole class. Sally hung her head and drew crazy little designs all over the paper. She knew her face was cerise, but she wasn't going to be like those other stupid morons who giggled and carried on every time the teacher bawled them out. Even old Robot. Gossip column. What #1 debutante of the season, whose initials are Sally Lamb, was seen romancing at the Stork Club with millionaire playboy Stevie Swift? Oh, Marie, Marie, called the beautiful young girl lying on the huge silken bed. Bring me the new Life magazine. Yes, Miss Lamb, answered the prim French maid. Hurry, please, called the impatient heiress. I want to see if that photograph did me justice. My picture's on the cover this week, you know. Oh, and while you're about it, bring me an Alka-Seltzer. Dastardly headache, too much champagne, I guess. Radio. Rich girl makes debut tonight. The long-awaited social event of the season brings forth Sally Lamb to society in a brilliant $10,000 ball. Nice work if you can get it. Flash, flash. Will you please pass your papers to the front of the room? Hurry it up, please. Miss Carter rapped her fingers impatiently against her desk. Sally shoved her illegible paper over the shoulder of the pink-faced boy that sat in front of her. Children. She pulled her big Scottish plaid handbook over to her. Delved around inside, and came up with a compact lipstick, comb, and Kleenex. She gazed at herself in the powder-dusty mirror as she smeared the lipstick on her pretty-shaped lips. Raspberry. The tall, slinky woman stood admiring her image in front of a huge gilt mirror at one of the more spectacular residences in Germany. She patted a stray hair back into her elaborate silver coiffure. A dark, handsome gentleman bent over and kissed her bare shoulder. She smiled faintly. "Ah, Lupe, you look lovely tonight." "You are so beautiful, Lupe. Your skin, so white. Your eyes, you can't imagine what they make me feel." "Oh," purred the lady, "that, General, is where you are mistaken." She reached over to a marble table and picked up 2 wine glasses, slipped 3 pills into one, and handed it to the General. "Lupe, I must see you more often. We will dine together every night when I return from the front." "Oh, does my little baby have to go there where all the fighting is?" Her raspberry lips were close to his. "How clever you are, Sally," she thought. "Lupe knows I have to carry the army maneuver plans up to the front, doesn't Lupe?" "Do you have the plans with you?" queried the charming 5th columnist. "Why, yes, but of course." She could see that he was passing out. His eyes were getting glassy, and he looked very drunk. By the time the Matahari had finished her 1928 vintage, the General was stretched out at her feet. She stooped down and began searching his coat. Suddenly she heard bootsteps outside. Her heart jumped. The bell went off with a loud clang. The students rushed helter-skelter for the doorway. Sally put her makeup articles back in her handbag, gathered up her books, and prepared to depart. "Just a minute, Sally Lamb," Miss Carter called back. Robot again. "Come back here a minute. I want to talk to you." By the time she reached the desk, Miss Carter had finished filling out a form and handed it to her. "That is a detention hall slip. You will go to detention hall this afternoon until it is over. I have told you numerously that I do not want you primping yourself in class. Do you want us to get all your germs?" Sally blushed. She resented any reference to her anatomy or pertaining thereof. "And another thing, young lady, you didn't hand in your homework." "Well, as I've told you, it's up to you whether you want to do your work or not. It's certainly not any skin off my back." Sally wondered vaguely whether she had any skin on her back. Or was it tin? "You know, of course, that you're failing this subject. It's a mystery to me how anyone could so completely waste their time. I do not understand it, not at all. I think it would be better if you dropped this course because, to be quite candid, I don't believe that you are mentally capable of doing the work." Wait, where do you think?" Sally had thrown her books down on the desk and run out of the room. She knew she was going to cry, and she didn't want to, not in front of Robot. Damn her anyhow. What does she know about life? She doesn't know anything but a lot of numbers. Damn her anyway. She worked her way down the crowded halls. The torpedo had hit about half an hour ago, and the ship was sinking fast. This was a chance. Sally Lamb, America's foremost newspaper woman, right here on the spot. She had gotten her camera out of her waterlogged cabin, and here she was, snapping pictures of the refugees climbing into the lifeboats and all of her fellow sufferers struggling in the raging sea. "Hey, miss," called one of the sailors, "you better take this lifeboat. I think it's the last one." "No thanks," she called over the howling wind and the roaring water. "I'm going to stay right here until I get the whole story." Suddenly, Sally laughed. Miss Carter and the X's and the numbers seemed far, far away. She was very happy here, with the wind blowing in her hair and death around the corner. The end. I love this story. I love how he writes the back and forths. There's, it's just so boop, 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 and because that's how it is in real life. Truman Capote, he's one of my favorite writers. It's just so, he has such a pretty lyrical way of writing that I noticed, it goes back to what that person was saying. He really had to work on his writing, even though he was already so gifted at it. Because when I read these early stories, I did notice the difference. It's the music to it is much quieter compared to his other writings, like Breakfast at Tiffany's, In Cold Blood. They're just beautiful, which is funny to say considering, In Cold Blood is about one of the most brutal murders you could possibly want to read about. And it's just a beautiful book. It's really, really... You got to read Capote. He's great. Um, let's see here. So, Capote. Now, like most people my age, when we were very young, we lost our minds when the movie Dick Tracy came out, and we carried these at the store. And I was obsessed with these because I just loved the movie so much. And this was my first introduction to Kyle Baker. And I didn't even realize that this was the same person who did this. This is something that I read obsessively as that's not good, as a senior in high school. And I didn't even put it together till after that this was the same person that did these Dick Tracy comics that I loved in elementary school. But man, you guys, Kyle Baker, he's amazing. So Kyle he illustrated it, and he did the lettering, and he did the coloring. And the coloring, like if you remember the movie, it was such a brightly colored movie. And as you can see here, Kyle did it justice. It's like watching the movie, reading this comic. It's just so beautifully done. And I cannot recommend these enough. It's just beautiful, beautiful, beautiful work. And yeah. Oh, it's so good. It's so good. This was actually the first one I read. I read these out of order just based on, the availability at the store. And it took me a while, actually. Like, I remember when we got these, I wanted to read them, but I was scared to because I was really little and this creeped me out. And I finally started reading them and I just couldn't put it down. It's just, little baby. It's just so good. Look at this. Look how, it's just, right? How fun are these? It's just so good. Meow meow. Prune face. Hi, Mama. There's Big Boy with his walnuts. And the third one. This one. This one is like this one adapts from the movie, almost panel for panel. There's the card game. That poor cat. Oh, I hated that part. Oh. Kid disturbs the card game. Tracy's chasing him, loses him on the train tracks. It's just, and he finds the walnuts and Breathless' earring. It's so good. It's just so good. You guys. The whole dialogue exchange between him and Breathless. It's so good. Oh, I want to watch the movie now. It's peppermint. Try some. You know, Tracy, for a tough guy, you do a lot of pansy things. That's so funny. It's such a good movie. Kyle Baker he just nailed it. Oh, Tess. It's okay. He comes back. No. Big reveal. No, it's actually Breathless. Oh my god. Poor thing. Tess, you're 1 in a million. So good. But yes, why I hate Saturn. I was obsessed in high school. I read this so much, and it's so funny, like, revisiting it now. I was rereading this last week, and it was a trip discovering how there are still characteristics of Anne that I relate to, but I was really surprised to find out how much I identify with her sister Laura now, which was not how I felt in high school. And this book is so... How do I explain this book? So Anne is a writer, self-loathing, alcoholic. She lives in New York. She has this buddy, Ricky, and their dialogues are great. And one night, there's a knock on her door, and it's her sister. And she's been shot. And this just sets off this wild series of events. I don't want to give too much away, but it's a very, like, here's the first 2 pages. Not your traditional comic layout, you know? Like, it almost at times reads like an illustrated book. But then you'll, get these panels here sometimes. But as you can see, there are no word bubbles. It's just the illustrations inside the panels. And then the words are, blocked off underneath. Very different. But I love the way... I love the facial expressions. They're just so... Aren't these great? And her sister, she is the queen of the leather Astro Girls of Saturn. And Anne's discovering this about her sister for the first time. She's like, what's with the outfit? She's like, it's a uniform. I'm the queen of the leather Astro Girls of Saturn. Duh. And the way it ends, it's magnificent. It's so punny too. Like this thing is filled with just puns and plays on words, and it's just great. I love Ricky. Laura's ex-boyfriend comes looking for her at Anne's apartment. And at this point in time, like, Anne doesn't know who this person is. So basically, like, to her, just this total stranger shows up. And there's this whole scene here. And it's just so funny. She's like brandishing this bottle at him. She's like, get out. And the guy says, you can't hit me with that. And she's like, why not? And he goes, that's good scotch. Oh, sorry, you want some? And he says, look, anybody who lives in a pigsty and has no food but spends $30 on scotch isn't about to waste it. It's against the alcoholics code. And then her inner monologue says, he had me pegged. I held the scotch on him while I backed toward the cutlery. And then she grabs a knife. She's like, now get out. Oh, God. He goes, look, I know what you're thinking. Oh, good. You're not crazy. You're psychic. Get out of here. And he goes, look, I'm not here to rape you or anything. Just read the diary, okay? Rape? Who said rape? Jesus, get out of here. Oh, God. Hi. I'm okay. I'm okay. Don't get your butt out of the camera. Meow, meow, meow. It's okay. I'm okay. Hi, baby. She says, come hang out with me. Yeah, all right. I'll come hang out with you. It's such a great graphic novel. So this came through Piranha Press, and I want to say this was like their most successful publication. And Piranha Press, like, they also, like, that was the company that Mark Hempel's, like, Gregory was published through, and Piranha Press eventually turned into Paradox. These guys here. So, Piranha became Paradox, which is what Brooklyn Dreams was published through. These were like DC offshoots. And I think I mentioned before, Brooklyn Dreams, these are about to be re-released by Dark Horse in an omnibus, and it's going to include all kinds of extra things, extra goodies. J.M. DeMatteis is the writer, amazing writer, and Glenn Barr is the artist, amazing artist. And now little baby's here, you guys. Okay. So yeah, Precious Rubbish, Truman Capote, Kyle Baker, and while we're at it, J.M. DeMatteis, Glenn Barr, phenomenal artists, all of them, great writers. And I highly encourage you to check these pieces out. And I guess I'm going to go ahead and wrap this up now. Thank you for hanging out, and I will see you guys soonish. Tomorrow is my baby sister. She's turning 40, so I'm gonna be spending time with her tomorrow. So no video, but I'll be back. And okay, yeah, bye. Talk to you soon.